The pivot point is the positional focal point of the layer's geometry when animated in layout. By default, the pivot point, you're going to find it right at the origin. If we want to see where the pivot point is for this layer, I'm going to come over to the View tab and choose Pivot Tool. Okay, and we can see that it's right at the origin. Okay, if I want to place it anywhere in this layer, all I have to do is left click and drag, and I can move it, say, to the corner, and so that'll be the positional focal point. That's where it's going to rotate and move from right there when we take it over to layout. Now, if I want to, I can hit N for numeric, and I can manually enter the XYZ coordinates for it. I can reset it back at the origin, which is 0, 0, 0. If I'm looking to center it in this object, I can come over to View. Right underneath the pivot tool is the center pivot command, and it finds the center of the selection. Okay, so and remember, the pivot point is for the layer. If I were to now cut, well, let's just go ahead and do it. I'm going to cut and paste this into layer 2, go over to pivot tool, and we can see that it's at the origin. But if I come back to layer 1, anything that I put into layer 1, this is where the pivot point's going to be. So we do need to remember that the pivot point is for the layer, so that if we're shuffling around our objects from our geometry from layer to layer, the pivot point's not going to go with it. So let's just take a quick look. I've got this object and its pivot point is here. Instead of selecting the whole object, I'm just going to select this top polygon. Okay, and the pivot's here. Now I could move it up and hope that I get it right in the center of here, but I could use the center pivot command, and it places it right at the center of my selection. So you don't have to select and have everything selected. Of course, remembering that in LightWave Modeler, if nothing is selected, everything is selected. So I just selected the top poly and placed my pivot for the layer right here using center pivot. So I can either use center pivot to find the center of my selection and place my pivot point there, or I can use the pivot tool and left click and drag and move it where I'd like, or hit the numeric, open up the numeric panel by hitting N or coming down here and using the numeric button, and I can place it by using the XYZ values that I put into these input fields, or by using these mini sliders. So that's just a quick look at the pivot tool and the center pivot command for placing your pivot point for the layer.